Welcome to Limited Time Only.
I'm Esther.
And I'm Susie.
Limited Time Only is the podcast for anyone who feels there aren't enough hours in their life.
And each week there's a different topic for you to get your ears around.
Featuring chat, comedy sketches and interviews with interesting people.
Limited Time Only is a pick-me-up in podcast form.
The special guest later in the episode is Dom Jolly. This week it's time for comedy. In this episode, you will hear a naughty swear word, specifically
Susie.
Yes, Esther.
The other day at work, and I don't know if I want to share this, but I was teaching
Oh,
I was teaching a screen acting class. Oh God. And I gave them all the instructions. I was very enthusiastic, blah blah blah. And as I stepped 1 foot towards the right, I broke wind.
I mean, was it loud enough for them to hear?
It was. And it wasn't, it was just gas. It wasn't like but it was like a proper...
And a step to the left.
And a foot to the right. Put your hands on your bum. Don't let anything out. It was I if ever I've done anything like that in the past, which is very rare because I'm not a particularly gassy person, I would say, well, unless I've had a fizzy water, I would just pretend it didn't happen and just, continue. So It's like a squeaky shoe. But there was no way. And they all were just looking at me like confused, and I thought, shit, I can't do anything. I just went red and went, oh dear. And they all started laughing, and then one of them, this lovely Polish girl, went, this is a very safe space.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Oh my God. But it was quite liberating because I thought that was all right. And there was no odour. It was just a little bit of trapped gas.
A little Trump. Well,
Little Trump.
I've got, in fact, this is a story about Chris Clarkson, who was our guest.
Yes.
Oh, I can't remember what episode it was, but it was the
Panto,
in between
was it?
Christmas and New Year episode. Yes,
Yeah.
Panto Dame.
Yes.
Very, very talented actor. And I did a production of The Taming of the Shrew with Chris quite a few years ago. Oh my goodness. It'd be 20, it's 18 years or something.
Shit.
Okay, good God. But he was on stage. He was playing an Italian character. And we were at Jersey. We were at Gerald Durrell Zoo.
Oh, wow.
On Jersey. Before we'd perform there for about 2 weeks every summer, and he farted on stage, and probably no one really heard it. I mean, I think we heard it,
Yeah.
But it's quite a big audience. They're going quite back. It's outside.
Oh, well, yes.
And obviously to him it was incredibly loud. So instead of just sort of moving on, he was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm doing a French accent. I can't think of an Italian accent. I am very sorry, but I just did a little Trump."
That's so ace.
It's like, what? Why? Why are you telling them? But it was so funny.
Did everybody laugh?
I just did a little Trump.
Did a little Trump.
I think there was a bit of laughter. There was bemused silence
That's even
from some
worse.
quarters. It's like, what? But we were all laughing hysterically on stage.
So brilliant.
Super professional.
Yes. Oh my God,
But that
but
reminded
farts
me
are
of that.
funny. I mean, there's nothing funnier than a fart.
I love it. Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but I have become incredibly windy over the last few months, just non-stop and very melodious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I should be recording them. Really, I could probably do an entire, I don't know, musical number.
Because you might Mozart's wreck.
Oh yeah, I mean it would wreck. It would wreck Mozart.
Watch us
if you
wreck
heard
the
that. Watch us wreck the mic.
Psych.
Fart.
Fart. I mean, farts just generally are funny, aren't they? I don't tend to produce a smelly odour, but I do. I do often get like, if I've drunk fizzy water, then I can produce.
Anyone who doesn't find a fart funny,
Yeah.
has no place at my
Well,
table.
I concur wholeheartedly. No, if someone's not a little bit juvenile, I'm not interested. And in fact, Saturday, I taught a masterclass in Birmingham, and then I got to the end of it, and I said, "Can I get a group photo?" And they said, "Yeah." And then they all stood there, and they took a very nice group photo. And then I went, "I'm just going to do what I do with my kids when they're not all smiling, and I'm just going to say the word fart at you." And then I took the photograph, and they all
And did they smile?
They all smiled. They all laughed. Yeah. Because
good.
they're actors, so they are obviously massively childish.
Absolutely
which
childish,
is what I
yeah.
like.
Yeah, I mean, I like a bit of farting, like a bit of innuendo.
Oh, yes.
Unintentional. I mean, I can find innuendo in literally
God,
anything.
me too.
And it's got worse and worse and worse till eventually I won't be able to say anything without thinking it's rude.
Or having a song pop into your head. Like most sentences people say to me, I just want to launch into a song. And I know you're the same because we do it a lot on here. But sometimes, I mean, somebody was telling me something quite serious the other day, and I really had to restrain myself quite hard not to break out into a song because they'd basically said a song title.
And probably to fast
And
as well.
probably-
Restrain yourself.
Ooh, it's good. Suze, can we start the meeting now? We've been sat here for 20 minutes.
Sorry, I can't decide which of my bright disposition notebooks to use. Do I want to dream big and go for my dreamy navy blue notebook? Or do I want to shine bright with a notebook in luscious bright pink, LTO colours?
They're beautiful, but why have you got 5?
They all made me so happy I had to buy the full range. Plus, I'm down with the company ethos. Bright Disposition is a small family business and each notebook has been designed with love.
Let me have a look.
Here you go.
Oh, a hard-wearing cover. Gorgeous colours. A lovely band to keep them shut.
Yeah.
A ribbon to keep your place.
And top quality paper that my pen glides over and doesn't seep through. I think I'm in love. OK, I'm feeling sunny, so I'm going for the sky blue. We can start the meeting now, Esther. Esther.
Oh, sorry. I'm just on Etsy ordering stationery from Bright Disposition. There's an LTO discount code for 10% off. I'll be with you in a mo.
No rush. I'm stroking my notebooks.
Bright Disposition, uplifting gifts to encourage and inspire you. Available from Etsy. And for LTO listeners, there's 10% off. Just use the code LTO10 at checkout. If Susie and Esther haven't bought them all already. Mum, there's another big box from Bright Disposition here.
I've been thinking about our summer holiday, Graham.
Where
do you fancy going?
Don't mind.
We could do a week in Fuerteventura. Carol and Mick went there last year, said it was idyllic. Carol said it was very good for Mick's libido.
Don't mind.
Or we could try the south of France. I've always wanted to go there. I could be Grace Kelly and you could be my Cary Grant. We could have an affair to remember.
Don't mind.
Or do you think we should stay in this country and save our pennies? Have a weekend in Skegness where it's probably going to be grim and rainy?
Don't mind.
You don't mind. So I'm suggesting glamorous, exotic holidays with guaranteed carnal knowledge, Graham, or a wet weekend in Skegness and you really don't mind.
I really don't mind. Do whatever you want, love.
Do you know what I want, Graham? What I really, really want? I want you to have an opinion for once in your life. To be involved in the laborious summer holiday booking process. For all the decision-making and the anguish of choosing a holiday not to fall solely on my shoulders. For you to want to do something. And for you to be the man and take control and ravage me in a surprising manner.
Oh, OK, love. Well, how about I book the holiday then? I could book us a nice romantic holiday in Lake Garda. And then we could do it here in the kitchen now if you like. Right, I'm being the man of the house. I'll go and book Lake Garda and then I'll come back and ravage you. What's wrong?
I don't really want to go to Lake Garda, Graham. Not since we saw that TV travel documentary with Henry Kelly getting food poisoning there. Plus it will be very expensive. And I would like to get a bigger air fryer. So maybe we should just do a weekend in Skegness.
Shall I just ravage you on the kitchen floor now then?
I'm not really in the mood right now, Graham. Plus I've just mopped the floor and the chase is about to start. Tell you what, why don't I book Skegness? I'll have a look for some hotels and then you can ravage me in bed at 10 p.m. after Silent Witness.
I don't mind.
Miss Piggy.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Delicious and delightful.
It's a little,
and I really want to eat something now.
Amuse bouche.
Was an amusing bush, yes.
Oh, God. Well, we're talking about comedy, so
We are talking about comedy.
that just led us in naturally there.
We did, and we are hilarious.
Improvised comedy.
Oh, we're geniuses. Genius. Oh God, I need to cough now.
Moose
Get
boosh
that
too.
frog out of my throat.
And into my car.
So, what are your first memories of comedy?
Oh, cripes.
Because for me, I can tell you that comedy, from a very early age, I realised being funny was a very high currency. I learnt that really early on from being with my grand's brother, my uncle Michael, who was a northerner and like a little Norman Wisdom, and would just come into the room and you'll be in fits, and my mum's brother-in-law, my uncle Charles, and they were both, he was a proper Brummie, and my uncle Michael was a proper Cheshire lad, and they were just very funny people. And I remember watching how they could hold people and how brilliant it felt to laugh in their presence, and how much I enjoyed laughing, and what a really strong currency it was, and that I really valued it, but I could see other people valued it. So, and I like laughing, and I used to sit with my gran. Oh God, she was so ace. But I don't know if I've ever laughed as hard as I used to laugh with my gran, and we would make each other laugh. And she died when I was 16. But I remember being 11, 12 and sitting and looking out the window as people walk past the house and everything, and just making each other laugh and being doubled over and to the point where you're in physical pain and saying stop it to each other. Yeah, so early on we watched a lot of comedy as kids. So for me, I just knew I like it. I love laughing. I like finding the silly and everything. But also, it gets you quite far if you can be funny.
Yes. I'm just going to sing something very quickly because...
Okay.
I love to laugh.
Oh, yes.
Loud and long and clear. You talking about that made me think of lots of things, but it made me think of my 5-year-old, Henry, who is very funny. And both my husband and I can see that he knows how to be funny, and he's very clever, and I mean you know when children surprise you, but
yes,
but he's constantly surprising me because I'm constantly surprised at how bright he is and how he can see things and how he's able to make a joke.
Yes, and make the connection.
And that he's doing it on purpose. But he's got great physical comedy, and he's able to understand kind of gag, and and it's very enjoyable watching him enjoy that, and watching and being aware of how much. I mean, he makes me laugh so much. I know he'll, and Beatrice does as well. We laugh together. But I was thinking about, because I hadn't really thought about my grandmother, but actually, because I was saying, earliest memory of comedy, and then you said that, and I thought, well, actually, yeah, my grandma's stories were hilarious. From the Second World War, she was a nurse in Egypt, and the stories she used to tell, that told us about of things that they did. She was so naughty. She was naughty.
Yes.
And silly, and she found silly things very funny, and oh my God, and I think she made the soldiers really laugh as well. But she was a funny lady, and we used to laugh a lot.
Do you think it's that generation a bit as well? Because my gran was a nurse, but at Manchester Royal Eye
Hospital,
Hospital, so
you've got to laugh, haven't you?
Exactly. So not quite as Manchester Royal Eye Hospital, obviously not quite as glamorous as Egypt. But she always wanted to be a nurse. But she was so funny, and she had 2 younger brothers, one 2 years younger and one 12 years younger. And I didn't know the one brother so much, but Michael was the one I was referencing earlier. But I remember them coming down to see her because they still lived in Cheshire, and we were walking through the village that she lived in, and her 2 brothers, they were mischievous. And I remember them pressing the traffic light to make the traffic stop, and then they sort of laughed and nudged and winked at me, and I thought it was the naughtiest thing in the world.
Grown-ups
really
doing
small.
that, so funny.
Yeah, grown-ups doing that, men in their sort of 50s and 60s doing that, and I thought it was so naughty. But she was mischievous and would love to sit and chat, and it was all very observational, which is the sort of humour I like. You know, the things that I loved were things like Only Fools and Horses, and I like the Royal Family and Gavin and Stacey and Victoria Wood. I like anything where I know I recognise myself, or I recognise people in it, and that's what makes me laugh. Like my husband was quite into Shooting Stars, which I did like. I did like Shooting Stars, but it never made me laugh that like Del Boy falling through the bar, or it was just always a bit. I'd be like, oh, I like them, but to watch something where it was, you know, just things that I could recognise. Well, that's always been what I love.
Yeah, it's. I was thinking about what sort of comedy do I like, and I think I've got quite a what. I think because I used to find Shooting Stars very funny, but I was thinking about the things that came to mind, and I wrote down first of all. I wrote down Ghosts, Red Dwarf, Vicar of Dibley, Victoria Wood, Phoenix Nights, and it's like these are big characters. They're recognisable, but they're not realistic. I mean, they are.
No, that's true.
They have they're truthful and they follow the truth of their world, but they are heightened characters. And I love, like, Ghosts, I think, because that's the most recent one. And there's also another sitcom called Bloods, which I really liked, which lots of people in it, and I can't think of any of them right now. Jane Horrocks is in it, actually. She's really good in it. Yeah, really good.
Oh, is it where it's about paramedics?
Paramedics, and it's again heightened characters, but also very like Ghosts, actually, and like all of these things, they had you were touched by them as well, because they were funny, but also they could be moving. And Del Boy, even, you know, Only Fools and Horses, there were moments of real touching kind of honesty and relationships. But they're all, but Ghosts I love because they're these characters that are so strong. And I'm like, God, I love that. That would be the sort of comedy that I'd like us to be in, you know, like where there's a strong characterization. And you can pull a lot of faces.
Ghosts. I absolutely love
good.
Ghosts.
Yeah, so good.
We all love it in our family.
I cried when it finished.
Yeah, I did. I loved it. I mean, the politician that, you know, he talks like a proper politician, and then you've got Pat. I think I love them all, but
he's
Pat
probably my favourite.
Might just tip
and
it
Robin.
for me.
I like Robin.
I like Robin.
But Pat, something about
Pat.
him.
There's a bit where the main lady is, who's not a ghost, but she can see them. They're all sat around the campfire,
Alison.
and she's dipping a biscuit into a tea, and then he looks at her, and because he can't eat it, he's going, donkey again. And the way he says it, we just kept watching the clip. It's so funny. Yeah. But I know what you mean. Yeah, I like observation, but I do like heightened. And I did watch Red Dwarf. It never made me laugh as much as Vicar of Dibley did, or but I did like Phoenix Night. I love those sort of characters that are observational but heightened. We watched Derry Girls as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And you can just be that much bigger. But what's so great about them all those things, is they hold their truth, don't they? There's this, they may be heightened, but there's a truth within that, and
which is what's the funny bit.
Yeah, which is the funny bit. And because the other things I like are things like Flight of the Conchords. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Oh, yes. The New Zealand.
Yeah, I have. I've only ever seen a couple. But
very funny and clever. And I love the music element of that. And I was thinking, well, I like the thick of it as well. But again, that is heightened characters.
Yeah.
And you can totally see the real, you know, people that they're kind of taking the pee out of.
My dad had me watching the Blues Brothers when I was quite young, and that's funny, you know, when they're and it's very dry, but that's all sort of exaggerated. Then you've got these characters when they're going to the nun to ask for money, and then she's hitting them with a stick, and they both can't stop swearing. And
it's like anything with Eddie Murphy in. I always used to find those really funny. As a kid. And the other film that I really loved, and I've watched several times, is Napoleon Dynamite. Have you seen that?
Oh, I did. I mean, I'm probably 20 years ago, and I don't have any memory of it.
Well,
so I'll have to rewatch it.
It's a really good one for when if you need a little bit of a cheer up. But again, the characters are completely mad, but you can believe them. You can believe they exist, and it's really heartwarming, and it's very surprising, because that's the joyful thing. When a character's a bit heightened, they can really surprise you, can't they? Because they can do things that, you know, that people wouldn't necessarily do in real life.
Exactly. Well, like Vicar of Dibley, you know, Alice Tinker, she's clearly not real, but I love her, and she breaks my heart, and I love her, and also, you know, she's sucking on a chocolate finger, and she's just brilliant, and you just go with it, and I like pathos in it as well. I think you can really... Well, if you make somebody laugh, then you can break their heart.
Definitely.
Can't you? Once you're in on the laughter.
Yeah.
I mean, when I wrote the play I had on, that's what I wanted to do: make everybody laugh, and then you break them a bit, and because once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
And that's quite nice as well, because it's real. I want to connect with it. I want characters that I care about and I believe, but they can be heightened. Yeah. Absolutely.
But Esther, what's the secret of comedy? Timing. I was like panicking. I was like, yeah, it is. It's timing. Yeah, it is. It's a musicality as well. I think comedy is music. It's knowing when to land the joke. It's knowing when the beat comes. Beats. It's a beat. And not everybody can do it. And I think when you think about talented actors, because I was thinking about who do I love, the actors who I love who are brilliant comedians. And actually the first one that came to mind was Sophie Thompson, Emma Thompson's sister. She is exceptional comic actress, amazing. And I was thinking about, what's his name? Martin Freeman. But he's, and then obviously the most recent thing he's been doing is The Responder, which is very not funny. But he's an exceptional actor who can
do both.
And he can do both.
And not everybody can.
No.
Not everybody can. Olivia Colman, I mean, she was cast in comedy all along, and then she did Broadchurches, and then everyone realised I could cry. And then and she's got that sort of Julie Walters energy about her.
Julie Walters. Blimey.
I mean, she's like the ultimate, isn't she?
And Maggie Smith.
That woman. Yeah, Maggie Smith.
I mean, in Downton Abbey. I mean, she just needs to look at somebody and it's funny. So. In fact, there's Much Ado About Nothing, with Maggie Smith as Beatrice and her husband, Robert Stevens, as Benedict.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, the cast is amazing. It's like John Gielgud and Alec Guinness.
Oh, yes. Yes, Alec Guinness.
But it's so funny. And it's so old. And it's in a studio and they all look really weird because they've got weird Shakespearean makeup. But yeah, it's like a masterclass in how to be funny.
Yeah.
This is the 2024 service to make you laugh. Calling at Cox, Shitterton, Wet Wang, Titty Ho, Nether Wallop, Fanny Barks and Great Cock Up. Passengers for Bell End should be seated in the front 4 carriages of the train, as the platform at Bell End is lacking in length. And please be advised that there is a rail replacement service at Rotten Bottom today, collecting passengers from Butthole Lane. Thank you.
I would say laughing is one of my favourite things to do. And I would put it very high on my list of values, actually.
Yeah.
It's really important to me because the fizz I get through my body when I'm laughing, and I do laugh loudly and freely, and it's probably a bit much sometimes, but I just adore enjoying those moments. They just bring me so much joy to laugh.
Well, it is a medicine, isn't it? It is a medicine.
It's a
therapy. You can have laughing therapy. And if you can, and well, that's the thing, talking about our grandmothers, and obviously, being a nurse is sometimes quite grim, but the ability to laugh, and they often say, I think police and paramedics and doctors, they often have, I suppose, quite dark senses of humour, because they have to, you've got to laugh, otherwise you just be crying all the time.
My dad's side of the family in particular have always laughed at that sort of thing. And I remember when my great uncle Michael died, he was buried in August, and it was like the hottest day of the year. I think it was like 94, 95, something like that. And I remember getting to the funeral and my dad saying to the ladies that were handing out the programmes who were part of the church, "Oh God, he'd bloody love this, wouldn't he? I bet he's laughing." And they were absolutely shocked. But he would have loved that we were all saying, "I bet he's done this on purpose so that we're all sweating in our black stuff." And that, I just love that kind of humor, because it's not mean. It's actually, it's a tenderness. It's a way of coping,
and it's a connection between you as well. Like, if you can all laugh together, and enjoy a memory of somebody. Oh God, this gone a bit dark, hasn't it? Gone a bit morbid. The other people I love, and I know you do too, are the wonderful French and Saunders.
No, I hate them. You're wrong.
Oh, good. Cut.
Yeah, no, I do. I love French and Saunders. Yeah.
There was a picture. In fact, I'll post it on our Instagram of them looking super glam. It's from a few years ago in red. They're kind of like circus performers, but they're super glamorous and just like because they can be super glamorous, super scummy. They can be everything, and they're so funny, and it's their relationship that makes it so brilliant, isn't it? Their partnership.
Yeah, they just seem like good eggs, and I like the fact that they're both quite straight talking, aren't they? I just love their sense of humour. Their silliness.
They are silly.
They're silly.
Yeah.
They're just enjoying life, and Christ, we're only here for a little while. I remember the first time I saw a comedian live. We were on holiday. My dad and my sister's mother and my sister. I was about 14, and my sister Catherine was about 7. We didn't all live together. This is all too much information. And we saw Joe Pasquale, and he wasn't famous at that point, or maybe he was just at the beginning of his career. I never seen anything like it. I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah.
I remember him making a joke, which is quite commonplace now, which was about a child saying to their dad, "I'd like to be shot into space as a spaceman," and his dad goes, "Well, you would have been shot into space if I hadn't been drunk that night when I conceived you." And I just remember thinking, oh my God, and the fact that he could hold everyone in the palm of his hand. And when I was really little, I was about 5 or 6, I used to do a lot of Maggie Thatcher impersonations, and I used to do a lot of impersonations, and I remember doing it for my gran and her mother up in Cheshire when my parents had gone away, and just them laughing. I might have said this before, but my great grandmother, they were both in tears. I was taking the mickey out of the fact my parents had gone to Bruges or Brussels, can't remember, and the mannequin piss, and I was doing that, and then I was doing Maggie Thatcher and going, "Well, you know," and then doing Charlie from Sons and Daughters at them, and they were both in floods of tears, and the power I felt, 'cause I was little, and they were both paying me so much attention, crying, doubled over, and my Nana Haddock was going, "Oh, Joan, she's a dirty little devil," but laughing, and just that thrill of sort of creating that much enjoyment for them, and also being able to hold an audience at that age was so thrilling.
To make people laugh is a real...
Yeah.
It is a great skill, and it does get you quite far, I think. But I used to do impressions of Tina Turner. I used to stick... if there were balloons around, I used to stick 2 balloons up my top and hitch my skirt up and do her kind of private dancer and sort of that the walk from side to side, and my dad used to find it absolutely hilarious. So that was my impression.
And isn't that lovely though, like you said with Henry, and just seeing them piecing it together, working out how to be funny, and how clever that is, and just how it's making you feel happy, and seeing the pride in their faces. Oh, I'm making this happen.
Yes.
And it's giving them that confidence. I mean, I do think it's a shame actually that I remember my father-in-law, the last few years before he died, he would say, "Oh, nothing makes me laugh. When you get older, you don't find anything funny."
No, that's not true, though.
No, and he said, "I used to laugh a lot as a kid." He said, "But you don't laugh anymore," and it's not true, because, but I think it's sad if that goes, because my dad's what is he? He's 78 in July, but my dad still laughs. Yeah. I mean, he was doubled over. He could barely speak when he was here a few weeks ago, and we were all crying with laughter because he was trying to tell us about this new internet browser called DuckDuckGo, and he just kept saying, and every time he said it, it just got worse, and we were all like, I mean, it sounds like nothing, and it was, but it just got more and more ridiculous. And we were all in floods of tears, and he could barely speak. And I thought, yeah, you don't ever want to lose that.
No.
You know, it's a part of life.
My grandma, the nurse, we were still laughing about farts. I mean, she was 90.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think actually those moments with your family or friends with jokes that no one else will ever find funny.
Yeah.
There's... And that make, things that make you laugh forever and ever and ever.
Yes.
Which I just that only will make you laugh, like an image of somebody or something that somebody. I've got so many of them that I love, and also I do think I probably laugh. There's a way I laugh with my mum that's different to anybody else. That's different to laugh,
lovely.
and we will get. It's quite hysterical, but it's very, very giddy.
Yes,
and it's that
that's
kind of
lovely.
Yeah, that when you, like you were saying, you gotta stop. We just, when we find something really funny, no one else would ever find it funny, and there is something there, that kind of special connection. I think I'll have that with B as well. I think I've got that. We do, and there's something about being able to laugh with your parent or your child that's quite brilliant.
It's joyful, isn't it? It's joyful, and like I say, I've really come to realise in the last few years. I mean, I always knew I liked it, but I think I've just become aware.
Do you like
that
laughing?
You're sorry.
Do you like laughing?
I like laughing. I love it. Oh, I love a good laugh.
Laughing is good.
I love it. Love a good laugh.
I love a laugh.
Ooh,
Love a good laugh.
I love a good podcast. And when I find one I really like, I tell everyone I know about it. I grab my phone and I share the podcast with everyone in my address book. And then I post about the podcast on social media. Then I rate and review the podcast. And then I have a warm feeling inside for the rest of the day. Just saying. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Limited Time Only. I know I am. Now, where's my phone?
Graham, are you taking your wellies to Skegness?
Don't mind.
Because even though it's not forecast, it probably will rain.
Don't mind.
And if it does rain, you'll just be stuck in wet trainers for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Or are you intending to pack some smarter shoes in case we go out for a nice meal somewhere?
I hadn't really thought about it.
You hadn't thought about it. You hadn't thought about it.
What's up, love?
What's up? I've spent weeks organising this holiday, looking at hotels, making sure that we have accommodation to be stimulating enough for the kids and on a ground floor level to suit your mum's bunions. I have packed and washed and cleaned and defrosted the freezer for this 3-day break in Skegness, and you can't even be bothered to take me out for a meal, and I'm just feeling very overwhelmed by the burden of it all, Graham.
Okay, love. I'll book somewhere nice for us to go for a meal. Just tell me what needs doing to get ready for the holiday, and I'll do it.
Downstairs toilet needs a clean. But this is the thing, Graham. I shouldn't have to tell you. Why am I the one who knows everything about our family's lives and what needs doing? Why am I the only one the school calls when the kids need something? Why am I automatically in charge of everything just because I'm the mother? It's the patriarchy, Graham. That's what it is.
Sorry, love. Tell you what, I'll book us a nice romantic meal at a lovely restaurant, just the two of us, and then I'll go and clean the downstairs toilet.
Thanks, love. Actually, Graham, can you not book Alessandro's? I don't really like the sound of it.
Okay.
Or the Dilshad, or Bertie's, or Wingwars. In fact, you know what? I'll book it.
All right. I'll go and clean the downstairs loo.
Oh, no, I'll do it. I always leave the mirror smearing. You never do it as I like it. Oh, God, I'm just so overwhelmed. Can I just say I love the colour of your walls?
Thank you very much.
Is it sap green by Farron Ball? Because that's what colour my daughter painted her bedroom wall, and it's gorgeous.
I don't do Farron Ball. I think this is called Pretty Green.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the other one. Yeah, it's a slightly sort of funkier, less posh one. But yeah, it is a nice colour. I'm obsessed with green, so.
Yeah, well, to be honest, we had it mixed. We didn't pay Farron Ball prices.
I've actually just been, very weird you mentioned that. I've just been sent this very cool bit of art by this graffiti guy I like. And literally, it's just arrived. So it's quite weird we're talking about it.
Oh.
And it's a Farrow and Ball spray can. How cool is that?
That's brilliant. So
That's great.
cool.
How random is that, though, that we're talking about that?
See, I just knew it.
I've assembled my own kind of, it's like a hospital.
It's like a green screen, but it's not green.
No, it's a hospital changing room kind of.
Yeah, I like that.
There's a really weird operation going on behind. I'm just
I'm
going to carry
expecting
on.
some costume changes while we chat.
Today's guest is multi-award-winning British comedian and writer Dom Jolly. Dom has the most interesting background of anyone I think we've ever met, and it's very challenging to sum him up in this short introduction. Born in Beirut, Dom went to school alongside Osama Bin Laden. Yes, you heard that correctly. He speaks several languages, regularly played bridge with Dido before she was famous, and sold his home to Salman Rushdie. He was a diplomat in Prague and a political producer for ITN in Westminster. A prank with David Mellor led to him getting the sack. after which his career then took a different direction, and in the early 2000s his hidden camera show Trigger Happy TV landed on Channel 4 and became an instant cult hit, gaining him a dedicated fan base. Now an acclaimed travel writer, Dom has written and toured several books and travelled to over 100 countries. We talked to Dom about the serendipitous moments in his life, his willingness to push boundaries, what his biggest piece of advice is, and getting arrested. Welcome to the show, Dom Jolly.
I was obviously rewatching some of Trigger Happy. I'll rewatch the first ever episode, and it's 25 years next year.
Yeah, tell me about it. You probably didn't watch the very first episode because the very first episode was we did a pilot for Channel 4, which was, they offered us half an hour, and I think in one of the first great decisions I made, and I haven't made many, but I think I realised that because we'd never made anything before, we didn't want to make half an hour. And back then he thought, God, I'd killed, for half an hour on Channel 4 would be amazing. I asked him whether we could make 15 minutes because I wanted to make a really tight 15 minutes, which I did. And then I remember thinking, fuck, but that means I've given someone else 15 minutes. What if they're much funnier than me? Luckily they weren't, so we got it. But yeah, so the very, very, very first sketch I ever did officially for Trigger Happy is still actually one of my favorites, and I'm not sure a lot of people got it, but it was me on Wimbledon Common dressed as a womble, having a nervous breakdown and littering and sort of muttering to himself. But I wasn't quite sure whether people remembered the Wombles, but it was the first album I bought. And also we couldn't get an official Wombles costume because they're owned by the Beeb or whatever, so I had a sort of knockoff Womble, which kind of, if I had to sum up Trigger Happy, the words knockoff Womble would be really good.
That's the new tagline. Yeah, I didn't remember it was 15 minutes, and then I was like, oh, that's really great, because it kind of, bam, you're in, you hit us over the head with it, and then you're kind of out again.
I mean, Trigger Happy itself, weirdly, was incredibly short. We gave in the shortest amount we could for a supposed half hour. In the full half hours, they were normally 22.5 minutes, which is, it's 11 minutes each side. The whole point of Trigger was I didn't want to put any filler in, and I wanted to it was all about the edit. I sat in the edit for years just putting the music and stuff, and I just wanted it to be like listening to an album, like a really overproduced album where you just didn't stop, and I just didn't want anyone to stop and go, should we watch something else? Yeah. So that's what it was about, really.
I rewatched the snail sketch the other day. I showed my 15-year-old son who'd never seen it. I can't tell you how funny I find that sketch. It's so funny. It's just genius, and they were all so sort of random and surreal. How did Trigger Happy come about?
I don't really know. I mean, I did stuff seriously first. So I did quite serious jobs in my 20s. I was a diplomat in Prague, which no one ever believes, but it's true. And then I worked in Parliament for ITN. I was like a political producer because I'm really into politics, and I've always wanted to be like a foreign correspondent or something like that. And I was working in Parliament, and I was like in Number 10 Garden when John Major resigned, and I was just like this weird person. It was a bit like Zelig. I was somewhat, I was at these places when these things were happening. But I just kind of loved the whole excitement of it all, really. I wasn't that motivated or ambitious. And so in the end, I got fired from ITN because I used to get sent out to get the really shit interviews, just like put a microphone in front of a minister, in front of Big Ben, and get a quote, like nothing big. And so I'd get bored. So I'd just get people to come down the background and do things. So I had some clowns start fighting behind Paddy Ashdown. And then I had David Mellor was being interviewed about football. And so I had some people playing football in the background. And they were supposed to pass me the ball when I scratched my head, and then I was going to go and play football. But instead they booted it, and it smacked David Mellor in the face, which was funny, but that's what got me fired. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And I wanted to get into documentaries. And then I saw an advert in The Guardian, weirdly, which said, that there was this show called the Mark Thomas Comedy Product, and they were looking for a researcher who had political experience. So I went thinking, fuck. And I put a suit on and everything, and I went along, and I realized what it was. I don't know if you've ever seen the first Mark Thomas Comedy Product, but it was basically an early Michael Moore. It was kind of like satire, and it was stunts, but taking the piss out of quite serious issues. And I remember I nearly didn't get the job because they said, you're perfect for this, but do you mind not wearing a suit? And I remember thinking, fucking hell, do I mind not wearing a suit? Like, 2 things I wanted in my life was not get up early and not wear a suit.
Yeah.
And the first day we drove various things through a McDonald's drive-through, from a clown car to a tank to a sort of mobile burger van where we bought all the burgers and then sold them for half price outside. And I just remember thinking, I can't believe they're paying me to like help do this because I would pay you. And I was a researcher, but because there wasn't a massive amount of money on it, in the end, they'd say, get someone to do this. And in the end, I just started doing those things myself because I loved it. So when I finished that show, again, I saw, it's probably the only 2 times I've ever read The Guardian, but there was an ad in The Guardian that said, do you have a sense of humour? And there was this channel called the Paramount Comedy Channel. And I went along for that. And I've now realised that someone had told them, there were 2 researchers on the Mark Thomas comedy product. We were both called Dom. And the other Dom has become a big cheese in telly. And I realised now that they'd heard there was this great researcher on the Mark Thomas product called Dom, and they thought it was me. And then, and that was really where Trigger Happy started, because I started, a guy came to the Paramount Comedy Channel, and basically it was a channel playing American, Frasier, Cheers, stuff like that. And this guy came and he had an ad budget. And, normally he'd just run trailers and stuff. And he met me and he kind of seen a couple of things I'd done. And we, between us, realized that actually the best thing to do to advertise a comedy channel would be to do funny things. And really, you wouldn't even have to advertise it, because if it's funny, then it would work for the channel. And so I started doing a sort of satire show where I'd go off, and it was all Tony Blair and Cool Britannia. And so I started going off harassing Peter Mandelson and putting fake Millennium Domes in his garden, and chasing sort of celebrity chefs around and doing all sorts of weird stuff like that. And that did really well. And Channel 4 saw it. And that's when they called us in and said, would you like to make a comedy pilot? And the best thing that ever happened to me was I said yes, and I wanted to make this kind of really smart satire show, hard-hitting. And the woman who was the commissioning editor said, oh, fuck. She said she'd just finished working on Brass Eye, and she'd spent ages in court, like for all sorts of things. And she said, I love your stuff, but I just can't do it again. Like, she said, is there any way you could do what you're doing, but just don't do satire, like just make it funny? And I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was constantly going to be trying to prove that I was into politics and that I was smart. And actually that just, the only rule in Trigger Happy I met Sam, and it's like, does it make me and Sam laugh? And I think that's why it became so big, because we were just liberated with that. That's a really short little story. It's how it came.
No, it's great. It was interesting. It's the same around that time as Brass Eye, and that kind of, is it real or not? It
was at a real moment of Channel 4, like really, being creative. It had the 11 o'clock show. They tried to put me on the 11 o'clock show and said, if you go on the 11 o'clock show, that'll help with you, like getting Trigger Happy commissioned. And I didn't want to do that at all. I'm not very clubbable. I like working on my own, but they forced me. So I went to a party political conference, and the joke was I was wearing a suit, the same suit that I used to wear when I was at ITN. So I looked like a reporter, and I just jumped into the sea. And then basically I just stood outside the conference, and anytime any politician came out, I tried to interview them, but I was soaking wet. And obviously after a bit they say, what the fuck's happened to you? And I go, don't worry, it's all about you. You're the important one. Don't worry about that. And it just made me laugh. But yeah, and on the 11 o'clock show, there was Ricky Gervais was there, and then Ali G and stuff. So it was a real moment. And we'd just come out of that period of Brass Eye and the day-to-day. Those are the things that really influenced me. Actually, the show that influenced me the most was a show called Friday Night Armistice, which was made by Armando Iannucci. Yeah. And it was kind of like day-to-day, but it was a bit like Trigger Happy in the sense that it was just totally absurd. But they did do newsy stories, and that's what I wanted to do. So they went to the Oxford Union, and OJ was talking. And when he came out, Armando got OJ to sign an autograph, and then he opened up the thing and it just said, I did it. And stuff like that. I just really liked it.
Yeah.
I haven't checked how old you are, so I'm probably talking about things way before you were born.
No. I mean, well, we're 46.
Oh, okay. So you would have been, you were younger.
Yeah, well, the day-to-day, I mean, that was, I do remember Friday Night Armistice. I just loved the day. I mean, I spent one Comic Relief. When you get sponsored for stuff. I was 17 at school, and I got sponsored to be Alan Partridge for the day. And I had to take a school choir rehearsal as Alan Partridge. I love that. I remember watching all that stuff and just thinking it was genius. It was so influential for me. And it was a period of, it was all of those things at that time. What I mean, I've not really thought about that before, that genre created.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, I think there are 2 things happened with the day-to-day in Brass Eye. I think politics were so toxic at that stage, because it was kind of like now. It was like the end days of the Tory government, and people were pissed off and angry. And I think that's where you always get good satire and sort of anger. Although we haven't had great stuff in England recently, I have to say. I mean, we should have had better shows. America's done great stuff. And then so that's what kicked that off. And then certainly what helped me with Trigger Happy, the thing that absolutely changed my life was, I remember I was really into a guy called Dennis Pennis. I just loved Dennis Pennis. Like,
yeah.
and Dennis Pennis was inspirational to me because I used to watch him and he used to go and stand outside, you know, celebrity red carpets. And, you know, he was very pre-YouTube, and he'd be saying to Tom Hanks, hey, he made the ultimate space movie. It totally lacked any atmosphere and stuff like that. You know, it was really great. Or Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're the biggest name in Hollywood, 87 letters and stuff. I just thought he was genius. And then for some weird reason that I can never remember, I knew his producer and they needed a roof to film on. And I said, I've got a roof in my flat. And so suddenly Dennis Pennis turned up in my flat. And I remember just thinking, fuck, I was so starstruck. And I assumed that he'd have lots of people, but actually he just had a cameraman and a sound man. And I thought, oh, okay, because I thought you'd have to get a big crew. And then literally 2 years later, I make Trigger Happy, and things had changed again. And just as Trigger Happy came out, the first camera really cost $1,000. It was called a Sony VX1000. And it was like, looking back, the quality now is terrible, but it was the first camera that I could buy. And then you could film stuff and you could literally put it on the telly. I mean, it now looks terrible, but you could. And that was honestly as important as punk, I think, because before that, even a year before, I would have had to hire a cameraman, hire a sound man. They would have wanted lunch breaks. They would have, you know, what, as it was, I just met Sam in a pub and we got on and he learned to use the camera and we just filmed and filmed and filmed. And so really that was I'm not claiming I invented YouTube or anything like that, but it was very much the first, just, we don't need anyone else. We'll just go and do it ourselves. Yeah. And that was massively helpful.
How did you come to work with Sam?
That's, again, all my stories are so insane that I know it sounds like I'm lying, but it's not.
Can I just say, when I was researching you, I was like, this doesn't sound like a real person's life. You sold the house of Salman Rushdie. You went to school with Osama Bin Laden.
Let's get back to that later, because when we talk about conspiracies, because someone's just done some deep dive into my life and claimed that I'm a spy, and that's why I'm writing this conspiracy book. But let's talk about that later. The Sam meeting was fantastic. I had a girlfriend called Izzy, who turned out to be Dido's best friend. We used to play bridge with Dido before Dido was Dido, just as an aside. And I went with Izzy. So I after this ad guy at Paramount Comedy Channel said to me, you know what we should do? Like, I've got this big advertising budget, and rather than spending it on trailers, why don't I pay you to go off and just do funny stunts that will get us in the news? And the very first one I did was I chased Peter Mandelson, who was then known as the Dark Lord of Spin. So I gave him a sort of underworld fan club of Frankenstein and a vampire, and we just used to chase him around town with signs saying "We love you," and we hired our own paparazzi, and that was the front page of the Guardian, and it just said Paramount Comedy Channel. It was like perfect advertising. So then they said, right, this is what we're going to do. You need to start filming these things, and we'll put them out. And I thought, fuck yeah, but I don't have a cameraman, and I can't afford one. They had a tiny budget, and so I went to this pub in Primrose Hill called the Engineer, and I was sitting in there with Izzy, and I was saying it's amazing and it's terrible. Like they've offered me this thing, like they want me just to go and fuck about basically, and they're going to pay me a small amount of money, but I don't know how to do that, and how am I going to get someone to film it and stuff. And there was this guy behind the bar, and he's literally cleaning the glasses, and he leans over and he goes, I can do that. And I said, what? And he said, I can do that. I can help you with that. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I hear you need a cameraman. He said, I'm a cameraman. I think I'd like to do that. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And I said, all right, well, why don't you come into Paramount Comedy Channel on Monday morning? This was like a Friday night, and we'll have a chat. What I'd subsequently found out, Sam was an artist, like a complete blagger, but really works hard. He'd never used a camera in his life, but he's quite autistic. And so he basically just bought the camera, read the manual, and learnt it. Although we were so shit that we only found out 2 years after we made Trigger Happy that we had a setting on the radio mic that if nothing happened, the sound just kept expanding, and it just, I mean, if we'd have learned that earlier on, but we were shit, but that's kind of what I loved about it. So anyway, he turned out on the Monday, and he could use the camera, and we had a production manager at Paramount Comedy Channel who was very suspicious of him and asked him to film stuff, and he did. And then we sort of realized that we had a really similar, we didn't have the similar sense of humor. Sam and I are very, very different. Sam's very driven, very focused, very attention to detail, and I'm completely scatterbrained and just fuck it, you know. And so we complemented each other, but we just found the same absurd things really funny. And it was just the weirdest thing. And I always think, you know, that film Sliding Doors, like if I hadn't gone into that pub, what would have happened. It's just so strange.
Yeah.
When you were younger, did you have that absurd sense of humour then? Did you have influences as a young man?
So I didn't like. I never grew up thinking I wanted to be a comedian. Never crossed my mind till I was 28. You know, I wanted to be a spy, which people think I was, or a foreign correspondent, or a diplomat, and I've been all three, or have I? But so that's quite fun. And a travel writer, and actually those are the four things I really wanted to be. So I fell into comedy, but I was always into. I think I had two influences. I had all that stuff we were talking about on British TV, which was making me laugh a lot. So Dennis Pennis, sort of celebrity hits, Brass Eye for its just balls and weirdness, and then Friday Night Armistice and Day to Day for sort of absurdism, which is what really makes me laugh. Surreal absurdism. But I think really where my comedy comes from, and where it's different maybe from most English comedy, is because I grew up in Lebanon and I speak fluent French. I grew up reading lots of bande dessinée, which are basically the sort of French, Belgian, you know, Lucky Luke, Asterix, but there's so many more than that. And so I used to read all that, and that's got a very particular sense of humor, which is definitely mine. And then I used to watch these amazing people that I loved that were doing it just. Sam and I had this expression: we do things for the beauty, which meant we were doing it not for telly, we were doing it just to make ourselves laugh. And there was a guy called Noel Godin, who's still my comedy hero in Belgium, and he was an anarchist, and he decided that there was no better way of judging a man's character than by how they behaved when they had a custard pie thrown in their face. So he and 7 fellow Belgian anarchists would meet every week in a bar and get drunk and decide who they thought in public life in Belgium had kind of got a bit up themselves. And then they would pronounce him guilty, and then they would attack him with pies. And one very famous French, actually, newsreader who was a real arse. He really fancied himself as a bit of a philosopher and, like, you know, he really loved himself. He took it so badly that they did him 7 different occasions. And then Noel Godin briefly got famous because he did Bill Gates very early on. But he rarely filmed this stuff. And that's what I really loved about it. I just loved that he was doing it for the pleasure. And then there was another group that used to kidnap the statues of Ronald McDonald from outside McDonald's and then make mock hostage videos with it in garages, like for no reason at all. And it's the same people that used to nick people's garden gnomes and then send them postcards from around the world.
Yes.
So it's all that kind of humor just really like resonated with me. So I think it's a mixture of very dry English humor and surrealism. But I mean, if you ask me what makes me laugh, I know now. I never knew what it was, but I have an expression now. And what makes me laugh is to travel vast distances and make a massive effort to do something totally pointless. It's like the more effort you put into something essentially pointless, that's what makes me laugh, actually.
I did read that you flew to Canada to go and to take some symbols and go and clatter them behind an Eskimo and scare him. And
I found a Post-it note on the ground, and it said "Frighten an Eskimo." I've no idea who wrote that. I know we're not supposed to say Eskimo anymore, but I didn't say it. So it's Frighten an Inuit, but Frighten an Eskimo sounded funnier. And I picked it up, and I was at the BBC and I put it on my computer because I just thought, well, it must have been some weird show where someone had been writing ideas. But anyway, it just sat there for ages and it started to obsess me. And so I thought, right, I'm going to frighten an Eskimo. And so I flew to Newfoundland, and I hadn't really done any research because when I got to Newfoundland, I got to the immigration guy and he said, "What's your reason for visiting Newfoundland?" And I said, I couldn't resist it. I said, "I'm here to frighten an Eskimo." And he didn't bat an eyelid, but he said, "I'm afraid we have no Eskimai," which is the plural, here on the island. And I was like, fuck, I really hadn't thought that through. But I thought, fuck it, we'll crack on anyway, because I had a crew with me. And so we drove out of St. John's and we drove across the frozen barren tundra that is like Newfoundland. It looks like the Falklands. So we went for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, nothing. The crew were like, "What the fuck are we doing?" Like, don't worry, it's all going to happen. And I had no idea what was happening. But sometimes I think fate takes place. And just as everything seemed lost, we came over this hill and there was this massive expanse of frozen lake. And right in the middle was a guy who, I don't think he was an Eskimo, but he looked very Eskimo-esque. He looked like the guy Kenny from South Park. He had one of those big hoods. And he was sitting doing what Eskimos, I think, do when they're not clubbing seals, ice fishing. Yeah, he was like, and he'd dug a little hole in the ice, and he was sitting there, and I thought, fucking hell, this is it. This is meant to be. So we stopped the van, crew get into position. So it's a long shot, and you just see this Eskimo on one side, and then you just see me slowly creep in towards him, and I'm just thinking, please don't turn around, please don't turn around. And I've got a massive pair of cymbals. I get right up behind him, and I smash them together. He jumps, and then I just sprint back. We jump into the van. We drive the 4 hours back to St. John's. The immigration guy go, did you get him? I go, we got one. And then we flew back home. I just loved that we didn't do anything else.
Yeah.
It was just for that.
Yeah.
I do sometimes wonder what this guy thought. It's just, but
I think that's what I love about Trigger Happy. I always go, what happens afterwards? Like, are they
it's
just
one
going
of
for the whole day, just going?
No, unfortunately not, because it's one of the disappointments of Trigger Happy, because when I used to do stuff for Paramount, no one really seemed to give a shit about consent forms. So we just we never tried to make people angry. It was always just like putting a weird thing in their day. So I never really got consent forms. We just did them. But then by the time we got to Trigger Happy, it all got a bit more legal. So we had to get consent forms. So most people, in fact, everyone on Trigger Happy has been told what's happened, and they've agreed to sign. I sometimes think people signed and really didn't understand what had gone on at all, and just didn't get it. And I might have to admit, it's probably late enough now that there might have been a couple of people that were so good that maybe didn't sign, and maybe a guy called Michel Souris signed Michael Mouse. So there might have been a couple of faked consent forms, but I doubt that.
Well, look, it's a long time. But you've kind of entered the popular culture. I mean,
you're going to say the word zeitgeist.
Well, I don't. Yeah, but anytime someone's speaking too loudly on a phone, you're always going to go, "I'm on the phone." You know, you pop into their head. Forever.
I don't normally do this, but I will show you the phone.
Yeah, wow. It's the phone.
But weirdly, you just did what everyone does. I never, ever said I'm on the phone.
Oh, no, okay.
So I would always say, hello, I'm in the library, or hello, I'm on your podcast, and it's rubbish.
Oh.
It's that. This is the phone. And the great thing about the phone, again, just shows how shit Trigger Happy was. I was walking down Edgware Road, and a year before we made Trigger Happy, and there was a big mobile store, and there was a big display outside of this, and I don't know if you remember, but there was quite a sexy mobile phone called the Sony Mars Bar, and this is what it was. I remember when it came out, it was such an exciting phone, and this was a model for it. And so I was a bit pissed. We'd had quite a long lunch, so I just picked it up and we ran off and got on a bus with it and forgot about it. And then we get to Oxford Street where our offices were, and I got off, and there was a DJ, an Australian called John O'Coleman, and he was doing a live interview on Oxford Street. And again, I was just trying to make Sam laugh. We weren't filming. I just went up behind and I went, oh. And I don't even know if I did that properly then. I can't remember what I did. But somewhere, like the very moment that idea came is on camera.
Wow.
And then I forgot about it. And then it sat in our office for a bit. And then when we started doing Trigger Happy, I thought, oh, yeah, because actually, I think people felt that it turned into some sort of message about mobile phone use. It wasn't. The whole point was to interrupt things that I hated, like musicals and theatre and posh restaurants and stuff like that. But to show you how shit it was, this thing is so heavy. Like I could have had one made of foam. It would have been so much better. But it's so heavy I can barely hold it. The aerial, it didn't have an aerial. So the aerial is just is like a permanent marker, which we put in. And the only thing we did do is we put a handle in the back so I can hold it.
Well, that's very clever.
There you go. So I've held on to this because it's, it made me.
It's part of popular culture, isn't it? I mean, that's part of British comedy
and I
history.
get a bit poncy about it because, firstly, it means my catchphrase is hello, which it's not my proudest moment. And also, I think I love the mobile phone because I think even people that hadn't seen Trigger Happy were aware of it. So it kind of, it punched way above its weight. And it did obviously have a moment. I wasn't aware at that time of how big Trigger Happy was because I was sort of in the middle of it. And it was only like 5 years later, really, I realized how big it was. Because also it was my first TV show. I just assumed, well, this is what happens when you make a TV show.
Become massively successful.
Yeah, I was on a train like a week after the first show went out, and I was sitting in a carriage. No one knew I was there. And that ringtone went off because, again, I chose that ringtone, Grand Valse, because I hated it. And then just as Trigger Happy came out, Nokia made it the default Nokia tune. So it kept going off, which was like a subliminal ad for the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, 3 people on that carriage stood up and went, hello, I'm on a train. It's rubbish. And I remember thinking, holy fuck, what has happened?
Yes.
And it terrified me. I thought everything's changed and I've no idea what the rules are. It was very weird.
In what way did it terrify you?
because I'm not very good at being. I think what I'm good at being is a sort of underdog, a sort of pathetic rebel snapping at the heels of. I'm not very good at being. I'm not very good at being things.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to belong to things. I mean, I'm sound like a ponce, but I'm not. You know, some people just get famous, and I think they were, you know, David Williams, I will name as an example, and were just sort of born to be famous. They suddenly start doing charity things, and they, you know, lounge around with Elton John and stuff. It's just not me. I'm way too awkward and sort of fucked up, really. I think not in a exciting way. I just hated it. I mean, I loved certain aspects of it. I loved that fame opened doors for me in the sense that it allowed me to start travel writing. You know, I'm under no illusion that the Sunday Times asked me to write for them because I was from Trigger Happy, but they wouldn't have kept me on if I couldn't write. But it opened a lot of doors and it allowed me to do a lot of stuff. But I just wish, I think much I'm thankful that anyone remembers it for anything and they remember the mobile phone. It's quite interesting because people will say, oh, look at that, one joke, mobile phone. And I'm like, one joke? There were like 28 unbelievably tight and funny jokes in every single Trigger Happy TV, and the phone was the least interesting one to me. That's why I'd put it before the titles. It was a kind of palate cleanser. You know, it was like, here we go, have that. And now the rest of Trigger Happy was very shouty. The rest of Trigger Happy was much more surreal, and me having shattering nervous breakdowns while dressed as a squirrel, which was much more to me.
I mean, I suppose it did because it became. I mean, and now, I mean, it's just more relevant than ever. I mean, that joke.
Yeah, I don't know if it's relevant now. It's a weird thing, but yeah, I mean, I still every day, I can tell you, every day, 7 people shout hello at me, and I still don't have a good answer. Like I'm like, hello. I went to the cricket yesterday. I went to the cricket. You can imagine the fucking nightmare. I'm just walking up and down. Hello, I'm at the cricket. I go, and what's terrible is, again, I'm very thankful people enjoyed a show I did and they remember it. But it's just every time someone does it, I can see in their eyes that they think that's the first time anyone's ever done it. And I know they don't know that. I know I'm being an idiot, but I'm just like, stop, just do something else. So just occasionally, I so love it when people come up and either they love my books, which people do, or they come up and they name a really obscure sketch. Like that's what if someone names The Frightening the Eskimo, or, people name, I was in Rishikesh last week in India. I'm writing a new book about the search for happiness. So I went to where yoga was invented and shit, which is my unhappiness. And I always meet people when I'm traveling because I use my social media as a kind of, not couch surf, but as a kind of in somewhere. So I go, I'm in Rishikesh. Anyone who follows me here, where should I go? What should I do? And I always end up having drinks with people and meeting really interesting people. And I have to say, I met, I think, the most obsessed Trigger Happy TV fan I've ever met. Like so much so that I think they had Trigger Happy TV words in their marriage vows. And I did a sketch in World Shut Your Mouth where I dressed as a Scotsman and I walked up to people and lifted my kilt and go, I bet you're wondering what's under my kilt. And it was like a roast chicken or something. And apparently her husband, the first day he met her dad, he dressed as a Scotsman and did that to him. So I was like, fucking hell. And then she kept naming these sketches, and I'm a narcissist, so I was enjoying it, but it was quite weird.
Yeah. There's so many, and there's a whole variety of sketches. And what I like is when the sketches, when you do repeat, when there's a bit of similarity, and I like that the people's reactions are different. And it's
interesting because Trigger Happy was actually the complete opposite of reactions, because I grew up loving like really early candid camera, like really early, like 1940s, 50s candid camera. You don't think people were funny back then, but that was the very first reality TV. It was the first time a member of the public was a star. And early candid camera was really surreal and groundbreaking. And then hidden camera, which is what I call it rather than sort of prank TV, got really lazy and shit. And it was like Beatles About and Game for a Laugh. And it was all about, we've done this and we've blown up your car. And then look, you're in the studio, here's your reaction. And I didn't give a fuck about the reaction. And I remember the first review of Trigger Happy, someone said it's really weird. No one reacts to any of his sketches, as though that was a bad thing. And to me, that's what was great. Because if you're British, you just fucking, unless someone's going to stab you, you just keep walking and ignore stuff. Yeah. And I love that. So people's reactions were interesting, but it was interesting in that they weren't reacting. They weren't doing because I've seen so many shows since, hidden camera shows, because I think I did, if I've done anything, I made hidden camera was the lowest rung in comedy. It was done by idiots. And I think it was seen as really thick. If you were smart, you went and wrote screenplays or sitcoms. And I thought, why? This is like an incredible skill. I mean, the whole thing's made up for a start. It's improv. I hate that word improv, but it's all made up. Like, I don't know what someone's going to say to me, so I can't write anything. So everything's off the cuff, and it's very exciting and adrenalizing. But we took a long time. We shot for a year for each episode, each show, each series of Trigger Happy. And since then, I've seen hidden camera shows come out, and they just fire them out, and you can see they're faked. Like I can spot fake reactions.
I don't like anything like that because I don't find it funny then, because I can tell, you can just see that it's not genuine. The way
we had two rules in Trigger. Sorry to talk over you.
That's
Like
okay.
the two things were, firstly, we never cut. So everything, we called it very poncily television verite. So we wanted everything to happen in that rectangle so that you could see that we hadn't cut. I mean, I think maybe once or twice we cut for something extraordinary, but essentially everything had to happen within that. And then the other rule, apart from it being funny, was that someone in every scene had to be not in on what was going on. And sometimes it's not the person you think. I'll leave a hint there, but most of the time it's me, you know, and just weird people having to put up with me.
The way you described doing the first series, and it had to make you laugh, and it feels like when you hear about a band talking about making their first album, and that you just don't care, you're just creating something. The second series, did you then sort of find yourself going, well, the first series was a hit, so now we have to... Did it make you self-conscious almost?
That's such a good question, and it's exactly that. We used to so link it, because both Sam and I, frankly, would have preferred to be in bands, but we're just musically incompetent. Like we weren't really interested in comedy. I didn't grow up like, I like comedy, but I'm not obsessed with it, and I didn't do stand up or anything like that. And it's exactly that. We had no idea what we were doing, and we just suddenly someone said, "Go and make this show." Like we had fucking lot of money, £1 million to go and make, 6 half hours of telly, and we didn't know what we were doing. And because no one expected anything from us, they just left us alone. And so we just went off and did our thing. And then the edit was what it was all about. I spent just months in the edit, and I loved being in the edit and putting all the music on, and then handed it in literally. And then Channel 4 announced it was going out on Friday night between Friends and Frasier. We were like, fucking hell. Like, I mean, we realized that was a big deal. And so, yes, when the second series came, the pressure was not that, because actually I think we kind of learned we learned what really worked. There was a lot of stuff we filmed that wasn't funny on the first, it's your 10,000 hours, which is so important. The second series, we're really in the groove. Like there are much better jokes in the second series, and I really knew what we wanted to do. The only worry was I thought, oh, people will know Trigger Happy, and therefore maybe they'll recognize me. Weirdly, no one ever recognized me, and actually it made it, people were, once they knew what Trigger Happy was, when you asked them to sign in the second series, they were much happier because they understood what it was, and they knew it was a funny show and it wasn't going to make them look too stupid, which is great. By the time I got to the BBC, when all Channel 4 wanted was me to make more Trigger Happies, and I didn't want to. I kind of, the most important advice I think I'd give anyone in show business, and probably anywhere, is never make any massive decision straight after you finish doing something. Like, it's like if you're in a band and you just finished making an album and you fucking hate your bandmates, don't decide then to split up, or just go away for a couple of months, have a think about it. And I just thought, right, that's it, I've done Trigger Happy, now I want to do something else. And the BBC offered me, and I went to the BBC, and I sort of fucked up the BBC because I didn't fit into the BBC at all. So when I got to the Beeb, I felt real pressure, because suddenly I'd been this sort of punky, weird indie kid, and suddenly I was at the BBC. And I remember I realized things had changed when my first day at the BBC, I'm sitting in this office they've given me, and a guy knocks on the door, very BBC, with a clipboard, and he goes, "Hello, I'd like to know how, we always decorate a new office. Like, how would you like your offices decorated?" I was like, "What?" Like, fucking hell. And I said, "Well, I don't know." He goes, "So you need a desk and a chair?" I go, "Yeah, that'd be great." And then he goes, "Do you have any preferred color?" So I went red. I'd like everything painted red, because I just thought it was so absurd. The next fucking day in the Sun, big headline, Trigger Happy star refuses to start work at BBC until his suite of offices painted red.
No.
And you suddenly realized you'd gone from being this kind of the person taking the piss out of all this to like now supposedly being, well, you're the big cheese now. And I hated that. I just died doing that. Yeah. So yes, that's a great question, because it's exactly how we saw it as a band. And it was like the fun of making a band. And also like all bands, your first album is like 19 years of your life. And the second album is normally like the next 6 months while you're touring. I mean, actually, that wasn't the case with Trigger Happy because we got much better ideas and stuff. So, yeah, I'm really waffling, but I'm enjoying your questions.
No, it's lovely.
When you returned to Trigger Happy years later, how did that come about?
I never wanted to return to Trigger Happy because I really did feel that Trigger Happy was done and I'd moved on. And I kind of always looked at things and thought, when has there ever been a case of something coming back and being better than it was before? And I could only think of one example in all of show business. Do you know who that is?
Die Hard 2. I don't know.
Take that.
Take
Yes,
that.
yes,
Yeah. I would venture that they were cooler and better the
Yeah, they
second
were.
time
Yeah.
rather than their first. So, firstly, I didn't want to be Take That, and secondly, I just thought, I don't know. And Sam had got off to do his thing, and I just didn't know. And then I remember one day, I just literally, I was pissed actually, which is where a lot of my decisions come. I was in the pub, and I think I put on Facebook, is anyone going to help me make? I'd really like to make another Trigger Happy. Anyone going to help me? Because I just, I was doing off travel writing and stuff like that. And I can't remember. Someone sent me to someone and they were a nightmare. And then someone else said, oh, you need to meet this guy, Matt Campion.
Matt Campion is the creative director of Spirit Media Studios. Matt was a guest in Season 2, Episode 6 of LTO. He is also a mutual friend of Esther and Susie and Dom Jolly.
And so I sent a thing to Matt. I had no idea who he was. And Matt sent me one back and he said, oh, let's meet for a drink. And as I was going to meet him for a drink, I suddenly thought, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm going to meet some guy. I have no idea who it is. I mean, what am I doing? And I turned around and I didn't go. And then the second time, Matt agreed to meet me again. I'd made up some stupid excuse that, train, which I always do. And then I just thought, the second time I thought I'm going to go. And then Matt told me later that he would thought, I don't want to meet this guy. I bet he's an absolute wanker. And I don't want to meet him. So, and then when Matt and I sat down, and I think he thought, oh, Trigger Happy, he's going to be a nightmare. He's going to be a real, he's going to be a real just pain in the arse, a prima donna. But actually the moment we met, Matt and I don't know what it is, but we did. I'm really admiring of Matt. Like, I think Matt has this incredible drive and he's an interesting guy and he's a real enabler. Like I can't remember which book it was, but there's a book about most people, hang out in one group of people and you don't really change. And there are certain people that are connectors, and Matt's a real connector, and I think he's brilliant with that. And anyway, so yeah, I said, well, this is what I want to do, and so we thought, well, what we didn't want to do was make a massive new series, because in case it was shit. And so I thought, actually, let's just make some tiny ones for fun. And so we ended up making sort of mini Trigger Happies. And I remember the very first day, again, no planning. Matt said, well, what are the ideas? I said, well, I don't really have any. I normally he goes, well, how does it work? Because he'd never made it, so he's like suddenly with the show that he loved as a kid, thinking, oh my God, I'm making Trigger Happy with Dom Jolly. And he said, so how do we do it? And I said, well, I don't know. In the old days, Sam would just start filming and I would think of something and we'd crack on. And we were in Brighton. So we're in this square called Palmyra Square. And Matt goes, all right, well, here's the camera. What do we do? And I said, I don't know. And for about half an hour, just sort of wandered around, and I thought, oh fucking hell, that's it, it's gone. Like I don't have the magic anymore. And then suddenly I saw this bike go past. It was like like a Boris bike type thing. And I thought, that's it. I said, have you got any GoPros? And he did. So we just put a GoPro on the bike, GoPro over my helmet, and I just started cycling around Brighton. And I went through the library in Brighton. I cycled through a restaurant. I went into a lift, and just everywhere I was just going, cycle lane. This is a cycle lane. Just being an angry cyclist, but in places that were clearly not a cycle lane. And the whole catchphrase was everywhere is a cycle lane. And it made me laugh so much. And actually that went viral almost instantly. Even before we put it out as Trigger Happy, people were nicking it and using it on TikTok and stuff. And I was like, fucking hell, all right, still got it. Yeah. So yeah, that's how we started doing Trigger Happy again. I never felt the second Trigger Happy. I thought it had some brilliant moments. But in the end, we sort of went half-arsed at it, and it was kind of online. It was really dipping my toe back into the water because I was thinking of doing a film, and I'm still thinking of doing a film, but I think I'm too old now. It's never going to happen. But it was fun. It was nice because I have this weird skill, which is just being able to go up to people and make up shit and be funny and keep a straight face. And it's not a skill. I haven't worked for it. I haven't trained for it. I suppose I have trained for it in a way, but it just feels like a very unearned skill. You know, like it's a very weird skill to pitch to people. So if I'm pitching a film to someone, I'll just say, they say, "Can we see a script?" And you go, "There's no script. I'm just going to go out there." And they go, "Really? Yeah, just trust me." And you know, if things are going well for you, everyone trusts you. And if they're not, they go, "Fuck off." And that's show business.
Yeah, you've just got a
When
quick
you're
mind.
doing live stuff, because I know you've done. I mean, you've got your Dom Jolly conspiracy tour.
Well, I have a new sort of business model, because I what I really wanted to do way before Trigger Happy was be a travel writer. It's all I ever wanted to do. And after Trigger Happy, I started going off to lots of weird places. I like going to strange, dark places, and I kept going to these different places. And my literary agent, said, "We need to do a book, because your articles are really good, but you need to do a proper book about your weird travel." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what my travel is really." And then again, I've just read The Guardian, and I don't fucking read The Guardian, but it was in The Guardian. I read this article. Are you aware of Guyana? Do you know the Jonestown massacre? Do you know what that is?
Yes.
In 1979, this cult leader took 900 people off to this jungle campment, and basically they were about to be shut down, and so he made everyone drink Kool-Aid. That's where the expression "drink the Kool-Aid" came from. And it was a mass suicide, 900 people. It was a hideous, horrible cult thing. And that's what Guyana, which is one of the world's most inhospitable countries, is famous for. And I read this article that the Minister of Tourism for Guyana, really difficult job because no one's going there, had thought, how can we attract people to Guyana? And he said, "Oh, I wonder, maybe we can turn that camp, which is in the middle of the jungle, into a kind of hotel," you know, like. And the Guardian sort of very sniffily said, "This is a terrible example of this new thing called dark tourism." And I went, "That's it. That's what I am. I'm a dark tourist." So I wrote this book, The Dark Tourist.
Brilliant.
And in it, I went off on holiday to places most people wouldn't go. So I went on a coach trip around North Korea. I went skiing in Iran. I went to Chernobyl for the weekend. I did a road trip around America, which I called my assassination vacation. And I went to all the sites of famous assassinations, because I'm quite obsessed with assassinations.
yeah.
It's probably the goth in me. I don't know.
I like it. I like a good assassination.
And that really blew up. I'm really proud of the book. Like, I gave it in. There were no changes. I was just like, fuck, I know what this book is.
Brilliant.
And it has become a travel classic, according to Stanford's. So I have to say that was really exciting for me, because it meant I had another life, you know, like a second chapter. But also I was just really proud of it. It was like something I never really took Trigger Happy seriously. Whereas writing, to me, it was the sort of thing my parents would be proud of. You know, like I thought, that's it, I'm a writer. So since then, I've been writing travel books mainly. I've done 9 books, but my main books are travel books. So I did Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, where I went off around the world hunting Yetis and Bigfoot, and we went to the Congo to look for monsters, but knowing I wasn't going to find monsters, but more about the people that chase monsters. Then I walked across Lebanon, where I grew up, for a book called The Downhill Hiking Club. Very good book, if you like Lebanon. And I took 2 friends, and we spent 27 days walking from the Israeli border to the Syrian border across the mountain range. And that was amazing. And then I did a quick book called Such Miserable Weather, about the fact that I'm never a tourist in England. So I went around England going to the worst things you could ever go to, like the Keswick Pencil Museum and stuff like that.
Sounds great.
And then my latest book is called The Conspiracy Tourist, in which I've gone around the world hanging out with conspiracy theorists. And I'd never done live stuff. I'd been terrified, very weird for someone that can crawl across a road dressed as a squirrel with no fear, or dressed as a snail. But if you put me as me, I honestly, I would have gone to pieces doing a best man speech or anything. And so I forced myself. I thought, this is a skill I have to learn. And again, it's a 10,000 hour thing. So I went on a massive, for my Downhill Hiking Club book, I went on a sort of massive tour, but it was a book tour. And I called it Holiday Snaps. And essentially what I wanted to do was, I knew most people would probably come and see me because they were Trigger Happy fans and would assume that I was going to be shouting into a phone and dressed as a squirrel. But actually, instead, they found me on a stage telling them why they should go to Lebanon for the next holiday and talking about North Korea. And I wanted to try and bring those two groups together and say, if you like my comedy, you're going to like my travel writing, because I think it's really interesting writing, even if I say so myself. And I think you learn a lot without realizing it, and it's funny, and I love travel. I'm obsessed. Yeah. I've been to 108 countries. Wow. So that's what I did. And this tour went on and on. And honestly, first month or so, like my wife would say, "Oh, what's the worst that can happen?" I go, "Would you like to know what the worst?" I mean, I was dying beyond dying. Like, I'd come out, I'd be sweating, I'd be hot, I'd be nervous. I didn't know how to control an audience. I'd apologize all the time. I thought that's what you did. I thought you came out and I'd say, look, you know, I'm not very good at this. I've never done it before. I thought that made me nice and human. I've now realized audiences hate that. Well, audiences want to know that you're in control.
Yeah.
If you come out apologizing, looking nervous, they get nervous. And that dynamic, the dynamic of live stuff is so interesting. Like what makes people laugh. Like even if you're in a room and there's 2 blocks, that will stop laughter.
Yes,
because the laughter wave stops at a block. I've learned all these weird things about architecture of crowds and stuff like that. Anyway, long story short, I got to the stage where I wasn't throwing up and drinking too much before I went out on stage. So I could go out and talk. And that's where I got to at the end of Holiday Snaps. So with this tour, that's going to be now my business model. I'm going to write a book and then I'm going to tour it and make a funny show about the book.
Yeah.
And so this tour is about conspiracies, and it has me talking and showing footage and pictures of the adventures I've been on. But then also, I don't know whether I should give away the joke, but there is a supposedly.
Oh, so there's a guest. There's a guest.
Well, supposedly there's a guest. Yeah, because it's a controversial subject. So I say at the beginning that basically I'll be debating one of Britain's most famous conspiracy theorists, Dr. Julian Northcote, who wrote a book called Cows, Britain's Secret Killers.
Yeah.
He claims up to 15,000 ramblers a year are killed by cows, and that's all been sort of hidden by Big Pharma. And so the idea is in the second half, we debate each other. But unfortunately, something happens to me at the end of the first half. And so he has to take over the second half. And I hate him, but I have to tour with this wanker.
Yeah, I looked him up. He looks like an interesting guy. He's
a fucking arsehole, he really is.
Looks great.
Do you feel quite confident now doing the speaking and doing the tours now?
I feel confident doing speaking. You know what I realised for ages? This is how stupid I am. Like I genuinely am a sort of showbiz naif. Like, you know, when Trigger Happy happened, I'd go on Have I Got News for You and all the panel shows and stuff. And I'd just go on and I'd do what I did on Trigger Happy. I'd wait for a moment and try and react and be funny. And occasionally I could do it. But most of the time you'd die. And all these people were just firing it off. And I realised all these fuckers have got prepared lines. Like they've got, and it's because they'd all been stand-ups. So if you're a stand-up, like you know that if you get in trouble, you can just segue into a bit that you know works. You know, I didn't have any bits. I was just making shit up. I did that for 15 years. So now I know whatever happens, I've done two and a half tours now. So I've got loads of kind of stories that I can, in fact, I've been doing it today. Like, you know, just, I would not be this fluent 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I can just go into it and I can do that. But it's about making it, I think some people come and think, I think the problem I have is it's not really stand-up comedy. In fact, it's not stand-up comedy what I'm doing. I call it extreme PowerPoint. And I think some people come along and think, oh, what the fuck is this? Like, it's like a sort of director's, it's like the DVD commentary over your book. And that is sort of what it is. You know, I'm not telling jokes, but it is funny, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. And so I get very snooty people from, you know, comedy websites and stuff coming along. But I'm like, well, fuck you. I'm not a stand-up. This is not what I do. I've never really fitted in to anything, which is a good thing. But sometimes it gets very tiring because I just don't know where I fit in.
Oh, but you know, comedy. What is comedy? You know, it's like, you know, there's so many.
Well, unfortunately, comedy's very snobby. You know, and it's one of the things I felt. You know, even by doing Trigger Happy TV, I don't think I've ever been taken seriously because, you know, for proper comedians, that's not proper comedy. But fuck me, it's harder than what they do. I mean, you know, I'm making it up. And also, it was a fucking massive success. So fuck you. But
we had some questions from listeners, and Alex Hookway asked, and I wanted to know as well, what's the weirdest thing that happened during Trigger Happy? Because I was thinking about different people's reactions to stuff, and there was one that I watched the other day when you're doing you're a runner in your full lycra, and you like, oh right, I've got to do my push-ups, and you're against the back of a bench with a couple canoodling on it, and I'm like, oh god, it's so awkward, but it's so funny. And then you end up
that's weird. That's new Trigger Happy, that one.
I watched a few from different ones, but and then the guy kind of wants his bag back, and so he shoves you on the floor, and I was like, god, that probably hurt. But also, was there the likelihood of some fisticuffs sometimes, and people get
it's interesting. So firstly, the whole point of all my stuff is never to make people angry. We're not Beatles about, so it's very rare that we piss people off. So actually the risk of physical attack was not normally there. People would normally just so relieved to find out what the fuck is going on. the biggest risk when you're filming shows like that, and the biggest problem, is the amount of people wandering around with someone they're not supposed to be with. That's what's astonishing. I filmed in a cinema looking out with infrared camera, and afterwards we said, we've been filming this. Anyone doesn't want to be on it. 8 couples get up. So there is an insane amount of adultery going on. So that's a big thing. But lots of weird things happen. My favorites, well, I've got lots of favorite stories, but my favorite one, I think, from Trigger Happy is I used to do a character who was a spy, and the spy would have the gabardine mac on, and he'd always be getting the wrong person for his handover, and he'd sit on a bench and push a briefcase over and go, the cows fly backwards in my house. So the weather is good in Volgograd this year, something like that, just making up shit. Yeah. So we're always trying to think of different places we could film, because we tended to film in the same parks. And we were driving down the embankment and we saw one of those kind of half private squares there with greenery, with lots of benches. I thought, okay, let's do that. Because the way we'd do it is we'd find a bench, and normally you'd have someone, the victim would be on the bench with their back to us. And then normally we'd have this Toyota Previa with blacked out windows would come up. And so we'd be filming from the Previa, which they couldn't see. And then you'd see me approach. So you'd see my face, and often you wouldn't see the person I was talking to. And this was perfect, because there, just through the railings, was a bench. And there were bushes around and lots of people having lunch. So we thought, brilliant, this is it. And we got there and we set up because it was just a steady shot. We just set up a camera on a tripod filming from the Previa. And Sam, who always fancied himself as a bit of a sort of action man, he had his sort of commando stuff on, and he went and hid in a bush because we saw the guy we were going to do. And we're all ready. And Sam and I used to have earpieces, which were quite rare back then. We were quite high tech. And we go, all right, Roger Dodger, I'm going in, So I went in and I had my spy thing on and my briefcase. And I walk up to the guy, and he's just sitting there, and he looked very just square in a suit, and he was eating a sandwich his wife had made him. And I sit down next to him on the bench, and I look at him, and he looks at me, and I nod, and he just goes, and then there's a long silence, and then I think, right, I need to push this on a bit. So I pull up the briefcase, and I slide it across to him, and he jumps like this, yeah. And he goes, what are you doing? And I go, you have the documents? He goes, what? He goes, you have the documents? And he just got up and pegged it. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I sit there and I laugh, and Sam's in the bushes laughing. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, I get held like that. I've got handcuffs on, and I'm on the ground, and there's armed police on top of me. And of course, what I realized then is this little park was backed onto the Ministry of Defence. So everyone in that park were people working in the Ministry of Defence having a lunch break, exactly the people that would be approached by a spy. So they're down there going, what are you doing? What are you doing? I go, I immediately lose any cool. I go, oh, sorry, we're filming. I'm filming for Trigger Happy TV. There's a bloke in the bush there. And they go, what? I go, there's a cameraman in the bush there. And I looked, Sam had fucking pegged it. So they go, there's no one in that bush. So I go, yes, there is. So they thought I was mental. So like that. But I had quite a few of those sort of experiences, which were quite fun. I got arrested on the Empire State Building, again doing the spy. This was just after 9/11. So actually, in hindsight, it probably wasn't a great thing to do. But I was up on top of the Empire State Building because I felt those spy scenes were very filmic, and so there's the observation town. I went up to someone and I said, the weather in Volgograd or whatever is this time of year. And literally out of nowhere, just security, wham, there's plainclothes security, possibly more because of 9/11. And I was put in a little prison in the Empire State Building. It has its own holding cell. So that was quite exciting.
Oh my God. So
I got arrested quite a lot.
Yeah. You have been a spy then. I mean, you've achieved all the things that you wanted to do when you were a kid. Really?
Well, the spy thing is so weird. I haven't even listened to it because honestly, I can't be bothered. But since I've written this book, The Conspiracy Tourist, and I've hung out, I don't give a fuck about conspiracies, really. I think they're very dangerous. Some of them, I think they're really dangerous because they've infected the body politic and they can really affect vulnerable people. But if you're not affecting anyone, you want to believe your nonsense, fine, I don't give a fuck. I just wanted to write a book about it because I thought it was an interesting subject. But of course, now I'm apparently working for Bill Gates and I'm a shill and, I've done that to, all that shit. But actually someone just sent me a thing and apparently there was an event in Huddersfield where they did a whole afternoon called Who is Dom Jolly, where they dissected my father's or my family. And apparently we've done a lot of work for the British Empire and my dad had military connections. Yeah, he fought in World War II. But anyway, so apparently they've done my mum's background as well. And I honestly am listening to it because it's just, it's such these. What's insane is when people write stuff about you that you know is untrue, you so know that that's not factually correct. You realize that all the stuff you listen to about things you don't know must be equally idiotic. But anyway, they've done this. I'm kind of flattered in a way that they've bothered, but it is very strange. But in that, I think they claim my dad was a spy, and they definitely claim that I was a spy. The closest I came to being a spy is I went to London University. I went to School of Oriental African Studies where I did Arabic, and we kind of knew that we were the only place outside Oxford and Cambridge, because we were linguists, where MI5 and MI6 would come and recruit. And I used to sit in the bar, and we used to know the guy. He'd come in and you'd see him, and he'd always pick someone and he'd sit next to them and he'd say, have you considered what you might be doing? It was all that. And in fact, so much so that I took that and I did a sketch about it in Trigger Happy. I went back to my uni and I made a girl say mugwaffin and told her to ring a lesson, and if she wanted to join the Secret Service. But anyway, they never approached me because I was a goth. I was full Robert Smith.
You weren't going to
blend in. And they never fucking approached me. And in the end, I think he must have seen me looking depressed. And I think I got what I'd call a pity fuck from MI6, because they came and sat next to me and sort of said, have you thought about what you're doing after uni? And
you would have been great.
I might have been. I think I would have been great, because I'm very good at lying. I'm very good at straight face. I love excitement and travel. But I was a goth. I think that was an essential problem. But on the other hand, maybe I'd have been the first goth spy. I don't know. But anyway, I was not a spy there. But then if I was, I'd tell you that anyway.
Well, yes, we don't know what to believe anymore. But
it's triple bluff.
I'd said to Matt, I saw him yesterday morning, actually, because I live in Hove as well.
Do you? Actually.
We went for coffee. But I said, yes, actually. But I said, if Dom approached me sitting on a park bench, I'd be like, well, that's Dom Jolly. And he said, well, you just don't get that demographic.
Yes.
Go young, go old. The trigger happy generation.
That's really funny. So that's my fear. Yeah, it's why I keep such a straight face, because the worst thing, if I can be any character and it's not me, but if suddenly someone goes, you Dom Jolly, I'm just like, no. Embarrassing. But I tended to know who, I can tell the sort of the demographic who know me. So I never really had that. I did have it once. Matt probably doesn't remember this, but we did New Trigger Happy. And I can't remember what the joke was, but I was essentially dressed a bit like a tramp, I think. And I can't remember what the joke was, but I think I was dressed as I think a trampy, sort of homelessy type. And I was doing the usual thing, just sitting next to people on benches, which I've done a lot of. It was in Cheltenham where I live. And I went and sat on a bench next to this guy. I could see Matt was in position. And so I scratch my head, which means we're ready to go. And I go, hello. And I start my spiel or whatever it is I'm going to do. The bloke just looks at me and goes, are you Dom Jolly? And I just thought, oh, fuck. And then it's just gone, that.
Yeah.
And I remember I could see Matt laughing, and I just went, yes, I am. and I thought, okay, he must know that I'm doing a sketch. And then I realized he didn't. And he looked at me, and I was dressed like all homeless and stuff. And he said, what happened? I mean, you were massive. And like, are you okay? And then he tried to offer me some money. I think he thought I was homeless.
Oh, that's so sweet.
That was the very lowest, and he was really sweet.
That is sweet.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Oh my God.
I did have a question from Susan Hawkins, actually, talking about the sketches. He said, did you ever ask to do a sketch that was turned down, that the network said, no, you can't do that? No,
because we never asked anyone to do anything. But because we just didn't. I mean, we never knew what we were going to do that day, so we couldn't. We certainly got a couple of things banned. So two things I did, which got me in a lot of trouble. Very early on, just before we'd actually made Trigger Happy, I was walking down King's Road with Sam, and he had the camera, tiny camera with him. We'd just been filming something, and we looked into what's called the Duke of York's barracks, big posh barracks, and we could see there was a party going on, and we were just always, fuck it. We just walked in. And people, I don't know, they didn't ask for an invite. And suddenly we're in this quite posh drinks party. So we're just necking some drinks. And suddenly I look over, and there in the middle of this drinks party, it's fucking Sarah Ferguson, like Fergie, yeah? And I look at Sam, and he looks at me, and I'm like, we got to fucking do it. So she's sort of on her own in the middle of this thing. So I just walk up to her, and Sam's behind me with this tiny camera. And I go, your ladyship, you are live on Good Morning Mexico. Or you have something to say to the Mexican people? And clearly we're not on Good Morning Mexico. This camera's like a home video camera. But she absolutely freezes. And then she goes, well, yeah, I'd just like to say hello to everyone, good people of Mexico. So she talks a bit. I go, thank you very much. Have you visited Mexico? And so she talks a bit. And then Sam taps me and I go, sorry, your ladyship, we have to go to commercial break. But during the commercial break, please do not move. So we stop. And for 2 minutes in the middle of this drinks party, Sarah Ferguson and I are like this. And I'm literally looking at Sam going, I can't believe we're doing this shit. And then we come back. We go, you are now tres, dos, uno, you're live back on Good Morning Mexico. And then her security people spotted and we were chased. So we ran out and I thought, fuck me, this is it. This is the one. Like we don't need a show. We're just going to put if we'd have had YouTube then, we'd have put that out and it would have been massive. We took a tube back to our office in Charing Cross Road. Now, Trigger Happy had not been out that time, so no one knew who I was. And an hour later, by the time we got back to our office, this shows how long ago it was, we had a fax machine. A fax came through from Mishcon Rea, who are the most evil, lawyer firms ever. They're the ones everyone uses to sue. And it just said, we know who you are. We know you're working for Channel 4. Anything that was filmed this afternoon, if that was used, we'll sue. And I was like, how the fuck did they know that?
They must have had cameras or something. And
No, we didn't have cameras though. They didn't know anything. I don't know. But so there was a lot of that kind of stuff. There were a lot of people didn't like it. I did K80 outside some place, K80, famous foreign correspondent, all about freedom of press in Tiananmen. It was a terrible joke. We were interviewing her outside. And I said, so what, do you get stress, shell shock when you're filming stuff? And then suddenly Sam shouts, incoming! And we both hit the ground like that. Such a stupid joke. And she should have just laughed. Instead, she went mental. So I did what I normally did, which is just run away. And I left Sam. And then Sam would always be left in this awkward situation. So we'd always film it. He'd go into this complicated thing where he'd pretend to make a phone call to the agency that, he'd pretend that he's just a temp who's been rented by this idiot. I don't know. I'm here with Miss AD now. No, he ran away. So it was all very weird.
Brilliant.
Yeah, there was lots of that.
I was seeing there was an interview with you, you interviewing Ian Botham. And then you...
Oh, God, I love Ian Botham. I mean, a lot of those early interviews were just people I wanted to meet. I went to the cricket yesterday. Yeah. I'm obsessed with cricket. So yeah, I really just wanted to meet Botham. Really, although Botham turned into a bit of a sort of Brexiteer weirdo. So yeah, I didn't feel bad about it. I did the umpire Dickie Bird, and I felt a bit guilty about him because he was a bit doddery. But it was never mean. No. It was just them having to deal with stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen, I don't want to be rude, but I've got an interview.
Yes, I was going to say we've gone over. It's so lovely to talk to you.
I've really enjoyed this. It's been like therapy.
Thank you. We didn't even talk about Osama Bin Laden and Salman Rushdie. You'll have to come back at another point.
I can tell you that because I do like that. I went to school with Osama Bin Laden, which is true, for a year when I was 6 and he was 16. We weren't friends, but it is quite odd, especially as it was a Quaker school where Quakers are famous for pacifism. And I did sell my flat to Salman Rushdie, and I didn't do the greatest joke I should have done, because when I knew Salman Rushdie was buying my flat, I had a double roof terrace. It was the same roof that Dennis Pennis had been on. And when I knew it was Salman Rushdie and he was in the middle of the fat word he was trying to hide, I told everyone, and I nearly did it, that I was going to retile my roof. So the next time Google Earth came over, it's going to look down. It was going to be a massive target, and it was going to say Salman Rushdie lived here. But you know what? I had a moral scruple, and I didn't do it, and probably for the best.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been God. I'd like to keep you for another few hours, but thank you.
I've really enjoyed that. I don't know why. I love talking about myself. It's the nasty.
We loved hearing about yourself.
We loved hearing about you.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really fun.
You have been listening to Limited Time Only.
Esther, I have to say, of all the episodes to end a season on, I think that was a bloody good one, mate.
Well, I am HO, in my humble opinion. I might agree.
I didn't know what that meant. I am HO.
I'm a hole.
I'm a hole.
I'm a hole.
Right, okay.
I'm hole.
It was so fun and fascinating and lovely to talk to Dom Jolly, and a lovely surprise as well. Quite last minute, wasn't it?
It was quite lastminute.com, and he was a delight.
Yeah, it was just really, really fascinating, and he's so articulate that it was a joy to kind of just listen to him, not umming and ahhing like I do and stuttering. Oh, I keep waiting for the drilling to start. we've got, absolutely typical, the point that we need to record, the man comes to drill in the mirrors. The mirrors that have been sitting wrapped up in fabric for the last 5 weeks since we moved to Hove. How has it been 5 weeks, Esther?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably to just do with time and hours and minutes.
Oh, you mean like the way time passes, like, 24 hours in a day, that kind of thing?
The way time passes, I think that's what it is. I think it's just general...
I think that's what I've got a problem with.
It's the spinning of the planet.
Yeah, I've got a problem with that.
And the sun and the moon and the waves.
Could you fix that for me? Could you make it slow down? Slow the cocking hell down, please.
Yeah. I'll do a Superman and I'll fly out and I'll slow the planet down.
I can just see you.
There we go.
It'd be Anxiety Woman with the weighted cape.
Yes, absolutely. Slowing the planet down. Well, I hope you all have a lovely summer. Thank you so much. It's been a shorter season this season because, we have kids and
I've
stuff.
moved,
And it's
relocated and lost time.
Yeah, and you've relocated. So it's been quite a season to sort of put out. But we will be back in the autumn. Yeah. We've got some brilliant guests lined up already. And I already miss it already.
I know. It's funny that, isn't it? I hope you've all enjoyed this season. The guests have been amazing, even if I do say so myself. And we've had some great chats and some lovely interaction with you guys as well. So thank you so much for getting involved. And we will keep posting things on social media throughout the summer, but it will be a slightly less frenetic volume of stuff. I mean, frenetic's probably overdoing it, isn't it? We'll probably post one thing a week.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to go from frenetic to flatline. One thing every 2 months. So expect one post during the summer. That'll keep me going. But do get in touch with us. If there's anything you want us to discuss, in fact, because we're always, coming up with, what we're going to chat about, and the possibilities are endless. But if there's something you particularly want to hear us talking about, let us know, because it'd be great to get some audience suggestions for that.
It absolutely would. And if you enjoy the show, can you please encourage everybody to like, subscribe, follow, and just share it with your friends, because that just helps more people have it in their earbuds, and then hopefully we can just take over the world.
That's the plan. And take over and slow it down. So if we take over, we can make it go slower. This is why we're called Limited Time Only, Esther, because our ultimate plan is to extend. If the years were longer, it wouldn't feel like time was going so quickly.
That's true.
So I'm going to start the campaign now to make years 100 days longer.
Yeah, just email it out to everybody.
Okay, have a good summer.
Have a good summer. Let's hope the sun bloody well shines, because, I just want it to. Yeah,
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, son.
Have a lovely summer. Love you. Bye.